Trauma is a complicated word. It can be very personal, or in the last couple of weeks, it can be very public and a collective experience. We welcome psychologist Tara Boothby joining us with more this morning. Good morning to you, Tara. Let's start there. There have been a few things that have happened lately that we've heard about in the news. A shooting in the U.S., 2 fallen police officers here in our city. What should we keep in mind as the general public when we're trying to recover from things like this?
Well, when we have so much information at our fingertips, sometimes there are times when it feels very collective. As a community, we're experiencing all of these things together. And so it's like a cluster of emotional experience, and it can feel like there's sort of like this cloud over all of us simultaneously.
And in terms of connection, we may not know these people or we may not be connected to them physically. Why do we feel that, that hurt or the pain or the disappointment? Why do we phase through those feelings in terms of people that we may not even know?
What's really interesting is we have a psychological term, it's flashbulb memory.
Okay.
So there's times in our lives when something happens, we hear news, we see a headline, we read something or we watch it on CTV.
Yes.
And it just sticks with us, and we can recall it with vivid detail. So we can see where we were sitting, what we were wearing, a song on the radio. It gets knit inside of us somehow.
And why is that? Why is it that some traumatic events stay with us in a more vivid way?
It's just something about the emotional experience. It hits me more on a deep level. Maybe there's some twinship transference. Somehow I identify with this story more than a different story would impact me.
And what sort of things should people keep an eye out for or keep top of mind when they're, dealing with traumatic events such as these?
Well, there's some things we can predict about grief,
okay.
And some of those things are that there's things we notice: shock, denial, bargaining, depression, and eventual acceptance. But there's some things we can't predict. The intensity of grief, the duration of grief. It's a very unique and individual experience.
And grief can be experienced individually, as you mentioned, but also collectively, simultaneously, as a community, as a city, as a group. What should we keep in mind, when grieving with others?
So when we notice other people are grieving, everybody grieves in their own way. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. Everybody has the right to grief and loss. Everybody has the right to just have their own unique experience. And we experience emotions like waves on the ocean. So as I experience this wave, I can trust that it'll crash on the shore and the next emotional wave will come.
Well, and that's part of the overall perspective you have as a psychologist. You deal with an array of people with an array of, issues and backgrounds. How do you deal with this? How do you grieve, or how do you deal with these sort of traumatic experiences? And how do you move forward from that?
Years ago, I heard a trainer say, Sandra Paulson, she's an EMDR trainer, she said, I hear trauma and I hear the worst things, but I also see miracles. And I think that's something that we all can take in, and it's like there's all these terrible things that we see and hear, but there's also miracles. And we don't want to be naive to what is awful and just poo-poo it away, because it's important to experience those things and ride those emotional waves. Let them crash on the ocean, trusting that the next thing will come. And miracles will come. There's good things that happen.
Well, it has been a very good thing to have you with us this morning. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and we'll chat to you next month.
Awesome.